Sahana Vavatu Sahano Gunaktu Sahaviryam Karavavai Tejasvinavaditamastu Mavidvishavahai. Om Shanti, Shanti, Shanti. Om, may the divine being look over us lovingly as a mother and father. May the divine being support and nourish us as a mother and father. May we have the strength and skill to study together the art of spirituality. May no misunderstandings arise amongst us. Om, peace, peace, peace be unto thee, and to us, and to all your beloved children everywhere. Om Hari Om Tat Sat. Dearly beloved, make it so. Well, good Saturday afternoon, and welcome to our class on Christ the Messenger by Swami Vivekananda. So we have covered quite a bit in this lecture that the Swami gave in Pasadena in the year 1900, but there's still a good ways to go. Is there anything left over from previous discussions, reading or discussions, that anyone would like to take up before we go ahead with the reading and all right, dears. Please, reader, Jeff, let us know where we are and then begin.
I will gladly do that. In the complete works, the printed version, volume 4, we're on page 141, the first paragraph at the top of that page. In the PDFs, we are in the version that's posted on the website at the top of page 7. In the PDF that I sent some folks, it's at the bottom of page 5. If you're reading the printed booklet, I don't know, because that's the version I don't have.
It's page 18 in the
Okay.
printed version of this little book.
Very good. Thank you, Haima.
That's what my marker shows. I hope I'm correct, Jeff.
It's the paragraph that begins, "We see therefore." And and I want to point out that both the PDFs that I'm looking at have a strange variation of the wording that doesn't make sense to me. So I'm going to be reading from the printed version.
Okay.
"We see therefore in the life of this great messenger of life the first watchword, not this life, but something higher. And like the true son of the Orient, he is practical in that. You people of the West are practical in your own department, in military affairs, and in managing political circles and other things. Perhaps the Oriental is not practical in those ways, but he is practical in his own field. He is practical in religion. If one preaches a philosophy, tomorrow there are hundreds who will struggle their best to make it practical in their lives. If a man preaches that standing on one foot would lead one to salvation, he will immediately get 500 to stand on one foot. You may call it ludicrous, but mark you, beneath that is their philosophy, that intense practicality. In the West, plans of salvation mean intellectual gymnastics, plans which are never worked out, never brought into practical life. In the West, the preacher who talks the best is the greatest preacher. So we find Jesus of Nazareth, in the first place, the true son of the Orient, intensely practical. He has no faith in this evanescent world and all its belongings. No need of text torturing, as is the fashion in the West in modern times. No need of stretching out texts until they will not stretch anymore. Texts are not Indian rubber, and even that has its limits. Now, no making of religion to pander to the sense vanity of the present day. Mark you, let us all be honest. If we cannot follow the ideal, let us confess our weakness, but not degrade it. Let not any try to pull it down. One gets sick at heart at the different accounts of the life of the Christ that Western people give. I do not know what he was or what he was not. One would make him a great politician. Another, perhaps, would make of him a great military general. Another, a great patriotic Jew, and so on. Is there any warrant in the books for all such assumptions? The best commentary on the life of a great teacher is his own life. This next sentence is in quotes. I don't know. Oh, okay. It's a quote from Christ. The foxes have holes, the birds of the air have nests, but the Son of Man hath not where to lay his head. That is what Christ says as the only way to salvation. He lays down no other way. Let us confess in sackcloth and ashes that we cannot do that. We still have fondness for me and mine. We want property, money, wealth. Woe unto us. Let us confess and not put to shame that great teacher of humanity. He had no family ties, but do you think that that man had any physical ideas in him? Do you think that this mass of light, this God and not man, came down to earth to be the brother of animals? And yet people make him preach all sorts of things. He had no sex ideas. He was a soul, nothing but a soul, just working a body for the good of humanity, and that was all his relation to the body. In the soul, there is no sex. The disembodied soul has no relationship to the animal, no relationship to the body. The ideal may be far away beyond us, but never mind, keep to the ideal. Let us confess that it is our ideal, but we cannot approach it yet. That was quite a long passage, so I thought I'd pause.
I think that's a very appropriate place to pause. And this is the thing for us to keep our eye on the ideal. Swami Prabhupada would repeat to us over and over, never compromise the ideal. No matter how you find it possible to live, don't think that the ideal has somehow become less because you are not able to live to that high ideal. No, the ideal remains true, it remains fixed, and though it's not dogma, because it is flexible and meant to be changed by, not changed by, but made useful for each individual student according to their abilities. Nevertheless, the ideal remains the same. What is the ideal? God realization, realization of your own true nature, realization of your Christhood, of your Buddha nature. So this is the ideal, which is not to be compromised. Any conversation, any thoughts, comments, or concerns about that?
Brother Shankara, this is Preetham.
Yes.
Hi, I had one question about the text. When I first read it, I was very interested in seeing what Swami Vivekananda's, I guess, definition of Christ's nature was, and how it tallies with the Christian conception of Jesus's nature as being both perfectly divine and perfectly human. I know in Christian development of Christianity and its theology, there had been early discussions about whether it was perfectly divine and not human, or perfect human, or a mix of both. I was wondering if, from a perspective of Vedanta, whether how that humanity aspect may or may not play in, as far as what Vivekananda is talking about.
If you recall, before we took up this text, we studied a book called Divine Grace by Swami Vivekananda. And the theme of that book, the aim and purpose for writing that book, was to make and prove the assertion that to be fully human is to be fully divine. To be fully divine is to be fully human. As long as we are embodied, this is the ideal. To be fully divine while embodied is as a jiva, as a breathing thing. And as we go on, we'll see that Swami Vivekananda makes this point about Christ, that we are all destined to become Christ in that sense. We are all destined to become, hello dear, thank you for lunch. We are all destined to to manifest our Christ nature, or as the Buddhists put it, your Buddha nature, your perfect divine being, capital B. Does that answer your question?
Yes, that's very helpful framing for me.
Okay, well, I'm glad you brought it up because it is right on point for what was being said here. To be fully human is to be fully divine. To be fully divine while embodied means being fully human, manifesting every aspect. And this is why we offer every aspect of ourselves, as it's said in Chaitanya's prayer, which will be discussed tomorrow morning. Anything else from anyone? All right, dear Jeff, please read on.
Balakrishna was asking what page we're on. He joined us just a few minutes ago. Balakrishna, which version are you reading? Please, you're muted, sir.
You're muted.
Please turn on your microphone.
This is the one that you sent it, PDF.
Okay. Okay, so that one.
Sorry to disturb.
We're on the top of page 5. So we're at the bottom of page 6, the paragraph
Okay.
that starts at the bottom of page 6.
Okay. Thanks.
Certainly. He had no other occupation in life, no other thought except that one, that he was a spirit. He was a disembodied, unfettered, unbound spirit. And not only so, but he, with his marvelous vision, had found that every man and woman, whether Jew or Gentile, whether rich or poor, whether saint or sinner, was the embodiment of the same underlying spirit as himself. Therefore, the one work his whole life showed was to call upon them to realize their own spiritual nature. Give up, he says, these superstitious dreams that you are low and that you are poor. Think not that you are trampled upon and tyrannized over as if you were slaves. For within you is something that can never be tyrannized over, never be trampled upon, Never be troubled, never be killed. You are all sons of God, immortal spirit. Know, he declared, the kingdom of heaven is within you. I and my Father are one. Dare you stand up and say, not only that I am the Son of God, but that I shall also find in my heart of hearts that I am and my Father are one? That was what Jesus of Nazareth said. He never talks of this world and of this life. He has nothing to do with it except that he wants to get hold of the world as it is, give it a push and drive it forward and onward until the whole world has reached to the effulgent light of God, until everyone has realized his spiritual nature, until death is vanished and misery banished. We have read different stories that have been written about him. We know the scholars and their writings and the higher criticism, and we know all that has been done by study. We are not here to discuss how much of the New Testament is true. We are not here to discuss how much of that life is historical. It does not matter at all whether the New Testament was written within 500 years of his birth, nor does it matter even how much of that life is true. But there is something behind it, something we want to imitate. To tell a lie, you have to imitate a truth, and that truth is a fact. You cannot imitate that which has never existed. You cannot imitate that which you never perceived. But there must have been a nucleus, a tremendous power that came down, a marvelous manifestation of spiritual power. And of that we are speaking. It stands there. Therefore, we are not afraid of all the criticisms of the scholars. If I, as an Oriental, have to worship Jesus of Nazareth, there is only one way left to me. That is, to worship him as God and nothing else. We have no right to worship him in that way. We have no right to worship him in that way, do we mean to say. If we bring him down to our own level and simply pay him a little respect as a great man, why should we worship at all? Our scriptures say, these great children of light who manifest the light themselves, who are light themselves, they being worshipped become, as it were, one with us, and we become one with them.
Now note this, they are the light, and that when we worship them, we too become the light. The light shineth in darkness, but darkness comprehendeth it not, until we focus our attention on our spiritual nature, and that light then glows brighter and brighter within us and drives the darkness away. This we're promised over and over by every great teacher, that this symbolism, this metaphor of light is used over and over. We are that. Any comments or questions from anyone else?
Actually, I have it because I still did not, I'm trying to understand this one. To tell a lie, you have to imitate a truth. And that truth is a fact. You can't imitate that which never existed. You cannot imitate that which you never perceived. But there must have been a nucleus of tremendous power that came down, a marvelous manifestation of spiritual power. I'm just trying to still get around on that thing.
Well, there was a wonderful book written called The Imitation of Christ. And it is about this exact same thing, that we can become Christ by imitating Christ. So we, of course, in the beginning, it's like they say in AA, fake it till you make it. Fake it till you make it. So then we have this capacity for behaving as if we are that until it actually shines forth from us. And it will, we're promised. So this is the intent of what's being said. Does that make any sense, Paul?
Yes, if that is the case, actually, in Ashtavakra Gita, this is what exactly he says. Keep thinking and keep talking about being affirmatively. You are that.
Yes. Precisely. Precisely. We are that. And however much it may not seem so at any given moment, we gathered together here on Saturday at noon to help reassure one another that it is true and that we believe it's true and that we're working together to manifest this art of spirituality. So thank you, Bala. It's always good that you find these details to clarify, because they need clarification.
And the other thing that caught my attention is, what a big heart Swamiji has it. Look at this, the last thing. He never talks of this world and of this life. He has nothing to do with it, except that he wants to get hold of the world as it is, give it a push and drive it forward and onward until the whole world has reached to that effulgent light of God, until everyone has realized his spiritual nature, until death is vanished and misery banished.
Isn't that?
What a big heart Swamiji has it.
Oh, yes. Well, Swamiji was that. Swamiji, when Swamiji wandered India after Sri Ramakrishna had left the body, Swami Vivekananda wandered for some years in India.
3 years.
Carried 2 books with him. One was Bhagavad Gita, the other was Imitation of Christ, Thomas A. Kempis' Imitation of Christ. And when he founded the Ramakrishna order, and to say on Christmas Eve of 1887, he was speaking to his brother monks about Christ and that book, The Imitation of Christ. So yes, Swami Vivekananda had become that. By the time he spoke these lines in Pasadena in 1900, he had fully become this Christ-like figure.
Brother Shankara?
Yes, dear.
I'd like to comment on the passage that Balakrishna was asking about imitating a lie.
Yes.
I think Swamiji was referring to lots of theories that various scholars have that the New Testament isn't historically accurate.
Yes.
And so I had an experience that I think might shed some light on this. In the early days of my spiritual quest, one of the first things I read was Autobiography of a Yogi by Paramahansa Yogananda.
Mm-hmm.
And when I started reading it, I was reading all these stories about saints with mystical, magical powers. And as a skeptical Westerner, I was saying, no way, this can't be true. But the book was so compelling, I couldn't put it down, and I had to come to terms with that. And so I decided, okay, it's fiction. I'm going to read it like it was a novel. That way I can continue reading it. And by the time I was 2/3 of the way through the book, I was saying to myself, nobody could have possibly made this stuff up. It's got to be true. It's too fantastical to, to crop into anyone's imagination. So that's what I think Swamiji is saying about the New Testament, that there's something very powerful and spiritual there, and nobody could have made that stuff up. And that
That's what I hear him saying, that, regardless of whether or not there was ever a historical Christ or Buddha or Krishna, it doesn't matter. That the power, that it's not being imitated from nothing. It didn't come out of a vacuum. That exists in the cosmic consciousness is a tremendous power, regardless of whether, the factual person exists. Oh, maybe I wasn't muted. Was I muted?
No, you are not.
Okay, I'm sorry. I didn't know if y'all caught that or not.
Thank you, Bhagavan Das. That was very on point as always.
But it's funny that when maybe by coincidence or maybe not that you mentioned imitating Christ, because I was listening to Swami Brahmananda, and anyway, he was reading from Imitating Christ, and in the book, there's a very easily to understand and actionable practice of trying to correctly attribute desires, and to always recognize and attribute that desire is of the mind, or that desire is of the body, and to keep us from being confused that the desires are, that they actually belong to us as the Atman or the Jiva. And
it's always very well said. Yes, and the imitation of Christ does make that point in the strongest possible terms. That all these things that these desires are of the mind and of the senses. They are not of the spirit. And they come and they go with the arising, evolving and passing away of this stardust space. They have no permanent reality. Therefore, their reality is as Adi Shankara puts it, a superimposition. It's a relative reality.
and also this may not be exactly on topic, but the talking about that, when we fulfill or try to satisfy a desire, that all we really end up getting is just memory and more desire. And I was really watching that process play out, and and trying to use it as a means to see it as to why in the order they say you just have to break a desire by not fulfilling it, and realize that that's all you're ever going to get out of it is another desire and memory of that desire telling you want more.
That's what we're told, and it's the truth. It's the living truth for any of us who look at our own experience dispassionately and critically.
I've heard to try to replace your desires with higher desires.
Well, that's a whole other story. That's Patanjali's prescription, and there are two different kinds of desires. The worldly desires, you don't try to replace those with higher kinds of desires. You don't try to replace wanting garnets with wanting diamonds. But instead, in Patanjali's Yoga Sutras, we find that there are the things to avoid, the yamas, and then the things to replace them with, the niyamas. If you avoid certain kinds of thinking and behavior, the yamas, what you must curb or avoid, then what are you going to replace them with? And Patanjali has a very clear and accurate prescription on how to do this. It's a several-step process, but it actually works so that your desires become more and more elevated and purified. And so slowly and slowly, you leave everything of the world behind, including your more basic spiritual desire, which is simply the desire to be free and
happy. That is what Swamiji says, every desire we have to discriminate whether is it taking towards my goal or is it taking away from my goal.
Yes, exactly.
Because you're never standing still. You're either going one way or the other, right?
Yes.
And
Yeah.
precisely. You can't stand still. This is what Sri Krishna points out in the Gita. There is no way to be inactive. You may want to be inactive, you can try to be inactive, you cannot. The very marrow of your bones, the very flesh of your flesh will make you active. So you're right, you can't stand still. You cannot stand still. Anything else from anyone?
I was paying attention about, what I had commented yesterday about why do I always forget, and when I'm hypnotized by the reflection, I forget the truths that I know when I'm not hypnotized by the reflection.
Mm-hmm.
And and I was just watching how this little eye, it kind of saw it kind of like a fishing cork, is as soon as your awareness slips and you let go of that cork, that little eye resurfaces.
Mm-hmm.
And then the reason I figured out is why do I forget? And that's just because that's its nature.
Exactly.
And
It's not only its nature, it was designed to have that nature. Very cleverly and thoroughly designed. This is what is meant by Maya. And if you want to know in detail what is meant by Maya, read the collection of talks given by Swami Vivekananda, published under the title Jnana Yoga. In the very early talks, the first half dozen or so, he is at pains to describe to you how carefully and thoroughly and thoughtfully Maya is.
yeah, I understand that's its purpose. When the cork resurfaces and you become hypnotized by it and you're in that delusion, you're incapable of seeing you're in the delusion for that time.
For that period, yes. Till by some grace you become a little bit awake again and then head back in that direction. As Jeff was saying, we never stand still.
Actually, one of the Swami says, the practice, that's why every time you think about ego, think about it is nothing but the Atman covered with Maya.
Mm-hmm.
This thought should come right away as soon as we think about ego.
Exactly. Covered by. So the process of spiritual practice is for us to uncover or discover the Atman beneath it. Anything else?
Feels like we connect to what we were talking before regarding our proper identification, proper identity. I think before we were talking about if you think of yourself, fake it till you make it. If you think of yourself as son of God or as the Atman, then that itself is a practice. A lot of the moments when the core comes up, why we identify ourselves as something less from us.
Pritam, you're breaking up so much we can't understand you.
Oh, I'm sorry.
I'm sorry.
My connection must be poor.
I'm very sorry. We just can't follow your line of thinking.
That's okay. No worries. No worries.
You could type it in the chat, Pritam.
Sure. Let me try that.
Yeah, somebody will read it for you. Okay. Anything else from anyone before we read on? Okay, please read on, Jeff.
For you see, in three ways man perceives God. At first, the undeveloped intellect of the uneducated man sees God as far away, up in the heavens somewhere, sitting on a throne as a great judge. He looks upon him as a fire, as a terror. Now, that is good, for there is nothing bad in it. You must remember that humanity travels not from error to truth, but from truth to truth. It may be, if you like it better, from lower truth to higher truth, but never from error to truth. Suppose you start from here and travel towards the sun in a straight line. From here, the sun looks only small in size. Suppose you go forward 1,000,000 miles. The sun will be much bigger. At every stage, the sun will become bigger and bigger. Suppose 20,000 photographs have been taken of the same sun from different standpoints. These 20,000 photographs will all certainly differ from one another. But can you deny that each is a photograph of the same sun? So all forms of religion, high or low, are just different stages toward that eternal state of light, which is God himself. Some embody a lower view, some a higher, and that is all the difference. Therefore, the religions of the unthinking masses all over the world must be, and have always been, of a God who is outside of the universe, who lives in heaven, who governs from that place, who is a punisher of the bad and a rewarder of the good, and so on. As man advanced spiritually, he began to feel that God was omnipresent, that he must be in him, that he must be everywhere, that he is not a distant God, but clearly the soul of all souls. As my soul moves my body, even so is God the mover of my soul. Soul within soul. And a few individuals who had developed enough and were pure enough went still further and at last found God. As the New Testament says, "Blessed are the pure in heart, for they shall see God." And they found at last that they and the Father were one. Another big long paragraph, so I thought I'd pause there.
Well, this non-dual reality of I and my Father are one, as he says, was read earlier, very early on in today's reading. We each shall come to this conclusion, to this experience, to this non-dual reality of the truth of our being. And when that is a reality for us, then there are no more problems. There are no more concerns. Spiritual. Daily life is always full of its issues and problems. But spiritually, there will be no more problems. So we will come to, I and my Father are one. We will come to this perfect renunciation. But the Son of Man hath not where to lay his head. This is Christ's cry of renunciation. And his renunciation, of course, as the Swami points out, was perfect. He held nothing back. And this is why, as it was pointed out by many in our discussion and by the Swami, it really doesn't matter the historical record, how accurate it is. It doesn't matter that there are 16 authors and 27 sources for the New Testament, for the 4 canonical Gospels. The truths that Jesus said, I and my Father are one. Blessed are the pure in heart, for they shall see God. Those things. There's no way that nothing can be taken away from those things. Nothing can be taken away. We feel their truth. Anything else from anyone?
The same idea, Sri Ramakrishna talks about the pure mind and the pure intellect is nothing but Brahman.
Exactly.
And, Preetham wrote something. I'm going to read it for everybody.
Please do.
Our discussion of Maya and forgetfulness seemed related to what we were discussing before about how we identify ourselves and fake it till you make it. Sensory distractions and extreme objects can only pull us down when we lose the standpoint of I am Atman, or I am the Son of God, and are thinking of ourselves as lesser than such an ideal. Sri Ramakrishna said, he who thinks of himself as a sinner verily becomes a sinner. Our discussion seemed to be speaking to that. Yes, that is true.
Yes, thank you, Preetham, and thanks for taking trouble to write that out. You're absolutely right. That this is what we were talking about, and Sri Ramakrishna did in fact say that. So if you think of yourself as a sinner, you'll become a sinner. On the other hand, if you think of yourself as a saint, you become a saint. Slowly and slowly, everything that is not a manifestation of your sainthood drops away. This is how saints are created, either all at once, rare, but either all at once or little by little, and whatever the process is, they refrain from, renounce everything that is not their sainthood, until finally all that shines forth is that divine presence, that son or daughter of God standing there, and we can see them as they come to visit us. As I've said before, if you want to know what I'm talking about, make sure you're here when Swami Vivekananda comes.
I'll just add that, that's the purpose of repeating names God and singing his glories, is because, the name and God are one and the same. And if we hold that in our mind, just like when people hold in their mind they are the sinner, if we hold that thought of God and in our mind, we become that, and we become pure to be that.
That's how Chaitanya's prayer begins. Chant the name of the Lord and his glory unceasingly, that the mirror of the heart may be wiped clean and quenched that mighty forest fire, worldly lust, raging furiously within. So you're so very right. Repeating the name, Holy Mother points to it, says, repeat the name, you will become pure as a star, and destiny herself will strike from the book of record what is written there about you. In other words, your bad karma. And for that matter, your good karma too. But your karma, that which is imprisoning you by continually inflecting your present circumstances, all of that, destiny herself will strike from the book of record what is written about you. Thank you. Anything else? Okay, let's go ahead.
You find that all these three stages are taught by the great teacher in the New Testament. Note the common prayer he taught. Our Father which art in heaven, hallowed be thy name, and so on. A simple prayer, a child's prayer. Mark you, it is the common prayer because it is intended for the uneducated masses. To a higher circle, to those who had advanced a little more, he gave a more elevated teaching. I am in my Father, and ye in me, and I in you. That's worth repeating. I am in my Father, and ye in me, and I in you. Do you remember that? And then when the Jews asked him who he was, he declared that he and his Father were one, and the Jews thought that that was blasphemy. What did he mean by that? This has been also told by your old prophets. Ye are gods, and all of you are children of the Most High. Mark the same three stages. You will find that it is easier for you to begin with the first and end with the last. So a multi-stage, fake it till you make it. Right?
Yes, exactly. Precisely. And do not slight the power of the Our Father which art in heaven prayer. It's a very powerful prayer and says some very, very instructive things. And the second stage, Christ put it another way. He said, I am the vine and ye are the branches. Now this is a qualified non-dual way of speaking about it. The vine is rooted in the unspeakable one, the Father. The vine that is the manifestation of that unspeakable and eternal one. But then it becomes the branches. So this is, and then of course, the non-dual teaching. I and my Father are one. I am my Father, and my Father is me. The eye with which I see God is the same eye with which God sees me. The eye with which I see God is the same eye with which God sees me, Meister Eckhart. But these were the words that signed Christ's death warrant. Because the Jews, as was remarked by the Swami Vivekananda here, The Jews regarded that as blasphemy. Anything else from anyone?
It's funny how it told them in their own scripture, but yet they considered it blasphemy.
Yes, well, that's Christ said, shame on you. You have the keys to the kingdom, but you neither use them nor share them. Shame on you. Anything else from anyone? How are we doing for time?
We have got about 4 minutes left. The next paragraph is a long one. Most of them are pretty long. And it looks like we're at a pretty good stopping place right here, if that's okay.
If that's all right with everyone else, it's fine with me.
Yes.
Well,
Okay.
I was just thinking about that for a second. It's because they didn't consider it blasphemy for God to say that, for the divine to say it. But if you have no concept that you could possibly be divine, then there's no way that you could speak that and it not be blasphemy. But but if
And
you
it remains blasphemy for the modern practitioners of churchianity, not Christianity, because Christ said what he said. But it's like Henry David Thoreau said, the New Testament is the most discussed and least read book of which I know. So,
and it also depends on what level you are at. The
yes,
authorities in Christ's time weren't exactly working on any level except possibly the first one. And so from the first level, I and my Father are one is a blasphemous statement,
Oh yes. Well, that was a direct challenge to their leadership of the Jewish people under the Romans. This was the statement of the King of the Jews. I and my Father are one. He could not be allowed to continue to exist. People were flocking to him. They say they flocked to him for his miracles. I don't think that's true. I think they flocked to him because of what they found there. When they came, particularly people of any spiritual sensitivity, they found what thirsting for.
Just being in his presence had to be a powerful and attractive.
Oh my goodness. Yes. Just all the records of what it was like to be in the presence of Sri Ramakrishna. What it was like to be in the presence of Adi Shankaracharya, of Sri Chaitanya, of Sri Krishna. All these stories. The Srimad Bhagavatam are the stories of what it was like to be in the presence of Sri Krishna. It'll bowl you right over.
we can do the same thing, here and now. It's like, because let's say if you're a disciple of Sarvadevananda, we flock to him, and it's not because we think that he's going to turn water to wine or start levitating, but we've realized that how the master or the avatar manifests through these swamis and gurus.
Yes.
It's that presence, and to be closer to our ideal is why we flock to them.
Yes. Yes, they become the face and voice of the eternal teacher. Anything else from anyone? All right, dears. Well, tomorrow morning 11 o'clock. The talk is on Chaitanya's prayer. The title of the talk is Chaitanya's Prayer, the Perfect Primer. The perfect primer for what? For the practice of Bhakti Yoga, which is what Chaitanya taught. So, any final thought from anyone?
Just that we're very glad to have you back with us.
Thank you, dear. I'm very glad to be back.
Yes, we are.
May all that sustain. All right. Jai Shri Guru Maharaj Ji Ki Jai. Durga, Durga, Durga. May we be safe. May we be healthy. May we be cheerful. May we have peace of mind. And may that divine being introduced to us as the Mother, Father, God in the prayer that opens these sessions. May we be aware and live in the security that that divine being has us in a secure and loving embrace. So until next time, dears, may you be well and in bright spirits. May the rest of your Saturday and Sunday till we see one another again be full of joy and wonder.